This is Levi Wampler with MMAStrikingCoach.com. Today we're speaking with Tony Blauer. He's been teaching reality-based self-defense since 1979. He's trained an entire alphabet soup of federal law enforcement, state, county, and local law enforcement, as well as several military units. Lately he's been showing MMA fighters the benefits of training realistically without hurting one another, using his high-gear protective suits in their training. Fighters such as Randy Couture, Pat Miletich, and Kung Lee have been using high-gear suits in their training. How are you doing today, Mr. Blauer?
Doing good, Levi. How are you doing?
Doing real good, real good. First, could you let us know a little bit about your history with the martial arts?
Wow, that's I think of the Reader's Digest version. I've been involved in the arts for over 40 years now. Started, wrestling as a youngster, competed, then boxed and taekwondo, and this is all, when Bruce Lee was still alive and he was Kato in the Green Hornet. So, definitely got the bug early and continued training. I've been teaching now professionally since 1979, so that's over 3 decades, and it's a long, I've seen every trend and every phase. I was around when June Rhee started the safety chops, and watched martial arts grow and evolve. And I was actually at the first UFC, writing for 3 magazines, 1993, and nobody had really heard about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and so I've kind of watched the modern industry evolve in so many ways. So it's been a fun ride.
Well, that's great. You've been around with it for a long time, you say?
Yeah.
Now, could you tell us a little bit about some of the fighters that you've trained in the past?
My main business is the law enforcement military training, and we started off in the martial arts community, and in 1979, 1980, I started doing this panic attack drill, which was this force-on-force training, and it was very different than what anyone else was doing, because we kind of reverse engineered it from a realistic scenario as opposed to just standing and fighting, and what happened was, one of my students said, "Hey, we should get some gear. We should design some gear." And I'm like, well, I don't know. Let me think about that. And kind of he planted the seeds, and I sketched out the high gear, and it was the high gear that led me to the fighters. I'd never approached them. And I guess what I want to tell your listeners is that the high gear was really designed as a scenario suit for force-on-force training, where the role players, both the offense and defense, would be protected from accidental and incidental impact. And the big thing that's attracted it to the MMA world, if you will, is the fact that we designed it with impact reduction capabilities. And this is kind of like a very detailed segue into, who are the fighters, because I want your listeners to know that I don't really train MMA fighters and go in there and teach them how to strike or teach them about nutrition or conditioning. I got a lot of friends that do that. What we do is we go in for their ground and pound. We go in to teach them the intelligent application of the high gear. And if somebody, whether they're amateur, recreational, or a serious up and comer, or they're in the pro ranks, your skin, your body, your ligaments, your tissue are your assets as a professional athlete in any sport. And so if you're getting any type of excessive scar tissue, which every MMA guy has, if it's impacting how you train, you start working around those injuries, so you develop other injuries because you're compensating, and high gear helps buffer some of that. I mean, MMA is such a brutal sport. But you can imagine, let's say motocross. If they decided not to wear helmets and elbow pads and knee pads and special boots and chest protectors, I mean, how short would a career be? So these guys are incorporating that protection not only in their practice and training, but, you know, actually the event. MMA, of course, is different, but I wanted to be very, very clear, you know, that when I work with, and I'll just, you know, list off, you know, Frank Mir, BJ Penn, Diego Sanchez, oh my God, I mean, there's been a bunch of big names and some people up and coming, Uriah Faber, Joe Lozon, and, you know, I was on, helped Frank coach on The Ultimate Fighter, met a lot of the guys there. But what I did is I showed them ways to practice forearms, elbows, you know, working on repetitive contact drills during clinching or dominant positions where that striking, you know, a buddy of mine, Rondon Vito, started the Marine Corps line system. He said years ago, grappling may be your thing, but blunt trauma is king. And, you know, it's true. I don't know if you ever heard that. It's attributed to famous boxing coach, legend, Joe Louis. He said everyone has a plan until they get hit. And so, you know, what we do is we take, you know, the gear and we insert components of it, be the chest guard, might be the forearm pad, might be the shin pad, into a particular fighter's style. You know, we'll look at tape of the fight. You know, I worked a lot with Frank before he fought Nogueira, and it was the first time Nogueira had been stopped. And we worked very specific drills with his sparring partners, and, you know, intercepting double leg clinches. And, you know, Frank was able to stymie him and nullify him. And, you know, I'm not going to take credit for the victory. I never do. It's always the warrior in the ring. But, you know, in part, we specifically worked on that. But, and here's the big thing where the high gear comes in for these guys is because it's an impact reduction technology, what that does is mean it dissipates the impact, but it doesn't stop the impact, which means that your role players still behave realistically. You know, if the gear is too bulky, if it's too thick, it distorts the proximity sense. If it's too bulky, too thick, you develop tactics around the equipment as opposed to a realistic target. And so they're still getting that you know, the timing and distance requirements that you need to be in a striking sport. They're still able to grapple because it's so ergonomic and so, you know, streamlined. It's only 7.5 pounds head to toe. But they're able to, let's say, you know, I've got a video when I was working with Joe Lozon where he's just working on, you know, kind of like trapping hands type stuff in a clinch where they're doing hand fighting, but then every so often he would drop an elbow across his sparring partner's face. Well, if he didn't have the helmet on, you know, he might have been able to do like 1 or 2 reps. Then he would have either changed position or he'd have been cut or had a mouse. You know, so you know, from an MMA perspective, if your sparring partner is always moving the target because you're hitting him too hard, you're not getting any reps. If he's getting cut or hurt, you're not getting any reps. So invariably people end up pulling their shots, not working on penetration and follow through, and that changes your game fight night.
That's great advice, or great point you make there. When you're training and you've got a fight coming up soon, do you really recommend that, like you're talking about, specific, maybe you pick out what your opponent's strategy is and you just drill specific techniques for that?
I mean, the real answer. I mean, you know, Sun Tzu, who wrote, you know, The Art of War, you know, he said that the height of strategy is not doing your best move, but rather the worst move for your opponent. You know, he said something like that. I think I might have confused that with some chess quote. But it was you know one of Sun Tzu's quote was you know that if you can that was a chess quote, but this is Sun Tzu's quote. He said you know the height of strategy is not attacking the troops or the munitions or the fort. The height of strategy is attacking your opponent's strategy. And both of them, that chess quote of doing the worst move for your opponent and attacking the strategy, are very cerebral approaches. They're not the battle of attrition, which is the common approach in training, which is like, you know, we do our stamina, we do our strength, we do our endurance, we beat the crap out of everything sparring, we know we had a good camp, and we go in there and fight. You know, the more elite athletes, the people with the longer careers, are going to be the ones that study the tapes and go, he does this. and that's your pre-contact cue. So I'm a huge advocate of, if I know you're coming in the back door, and you always come in the back door to get into my house, and you're the burglar, where should I fortify myself? Where should I set up? Where am I going to set up my trap, which would be my counter ambush? So if you know that about somebody, and we've done that before and we proved it, and I think a lot of the fighters do that. But it's the coach's job, right? The fighter is there like he's a professional athlete and he's going to listen to his team. I really believe that every team should be thinking about the fact that what is the sport? It's an entertainment sport. It's very violent. It requires a certain level of conditioning, and if you're in it for more than just doing it once or twice just to see what it's like, you're looking at longevity. You're looking about entertaining the crowd. You're looking at making your promoters happy, because if you're really going after it, you want to be a crowd favorite, and if you're doing it professionally, you want to eventually stop working at the car wash or or like Rich Franklin, move from being a teacher to which is a very noble profession, to being a professional athlete. Mm-hmm. You've got to look at the opponent, and you got to do everything else, but you got to know what you're likely going to face, because that'll change your reaction time.
Right. What would you think, or what would you say is the biggest mistake that new MMA fighters would make in their training, either overall or when they're prepping for a specific fight? Do you have any advice for that?
Honestly, I don't want to sidestep the question. I don't feel qualified. I got a buddy of mine, Joe Mullings, who's got the Armory down in Jupiter, Florida, and he works at high level guys that are fighting all over the place. I'm buddies with Greg Jackson, Mark Delagrati. I mean, these guys are, when I'm around them, I'm the novice intermediate. I'll have thoughts on strategy and planning and stuff like that, but I'd rather not. I'd be making shit up if I said, they should change their diet, or I'm really big into CrossFit. I think people should explore that, but I also understand that someone asked me when I was spending time with Uriah Faber, a bunch of my CrossFit friends said, hey, are you this is a couple of years ago, where he hadn't lost a fight and he's demolishing everybody, and they said, hey, are you going to get him to do CrossFit? I said, you tell a guy that's got negative 2% body fat is winning all this fight that he should change his regimen, right? So, mm-hmm. So everyone has to find their ritual, and what you want to be is, if you're professional, you almost want to. No one wants to lose, but you want to embrace a legitimate loss and go, okay, this is going to reveal my character. This is going to reveal a capability gap in my arsenal. It might reveal that your team doesn't know as much as they should to take you to the next level. That's a hard one, right? It's like moving out. When is the time to move out? And it's never comfortable. Mom, dad want you to stay, or they want you out, and you don't want to leave. And it's like one of these things. How do you break up with your team? That's a real heavy conversation for other people in a future interview, because I'm very philosophical with my approach, as you're probably guessing, and I don't give black and white answers, because what I'm trying to do is inspire a higher level of thinking. If you got an up and coming fighter listening to this, the biggest mistake might not be how they prepared for this fight, but who they prepared with and how they prepared. And that's kind of a heavy question, because there's elements of that loyalty or familiarity.
No, that's a great point. It really is. Could you share with us some of your favorite martial arts, or any books, DVDs, workout equipment that you feel people should know about or use more?
Everything has changed so much, and it's, I got an email years ago, and I always talk about it in my seminars. I got an email, Mr. Blauer, what is the best art for the street? And I answered back, art is for a museum, my friend. right? So,
Mm-hmm.
And he probably, hopefully he liked the answer and hear from him. I don't remember where it's from, but depending on how you decorate your house, that's going to determine what art you put in the house. And so I always tell people that your system's your art, and therefore your books, your DVDs and everything must resonate with your personality unless you're a collector. And so, somebody who wants the benefits of martial arts, and there's many, many benefits to just training in martial arts, can study Aikido or Jiu-Jitsu or Tai Chi or my system or, an MMA system. The real question is, what do I want? What do I want to eat today? Is if I say I want Oriental food, I mean, that's 500 categories, and that's like martial arts. But if I go, I want sushi tonight, suddenly, I'm going to find 3 sushi places. The metaphor here is those are the schools. And so, if you really want to fight, if you really want to be able to protect yourself relative to your age and the scenarios you find yourself in, you're going to be looking at Thai, at boxing, at an MMA gym, right? If you're in it for the long haul and you self-defense is a byproduct, but you're there for the culture, you're there for the fitness and everything, almost any art is going to do the job at some point. But it depends, again, most of my work is working with military law enforcement, and we talk about the AO, which is the area of operation, and we tell people if you're, in dangerous places looking for dangerous people, you're always in danger. And therefore your arsenal needs to be the same, needs to resonate with that premise. And so, if you're going to be fighting on an airplane or a bus or a train, grappling might not be the go-to place to be. You don't want to be getting stomped or kicked in the head if there's multiple assailants. So the answer, comes back to the philosophical answers is what do I want? What am I looking for? Over the years, Levi, I mean, I've owned boxes now, but, I loved everything about all martial arts. So I had books on Tai Chi, on Wing Chun, on Kali, of course, every Bruce Lee book, all different arts. And if I just gleaned one idea, it might have been an expression. It might have been somebody describing how they generated power and is just exploring, the kinetic chain and how to move your body properly. Books on law and legal stuff. Everything ultimately influences you. You absorb it and you try to combine what we call the 3 I's: instincts, intuition, and intelligence, and you go from there. So again, another kind of esoteric answer instead of, I always tell people read Forrest Morgan's book, Living the Martial Way. That book, I loved. Power of One, which is a boxing book all on fear, very powerful, really influenced me. Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. The last 2 aren't martial arts books, but they're, I tell people on game day, whether it's a fight at an ATM or stepping into an octagon or a cage or sparring, on game day, you haven't changed as a person. You haven't changed athletically. You're either an ectomorph or a mesomorph. Your body, your fast twitch muscle fiber, nothing's changed except mindset. And so the biggest thing I can tell anybody is to delve more into their emotional psychological toolbox, because the physical side of stuff will take care of itself relative to your training. But where great athletes or good athletes or mediocre athletes falter is their mental preparation and how they self-coach during an event.
Wow. That's really good advice.
Yeah.
That's really good. It doesn't matter if it's martial arts or not. We're just looking for what you think is very important. Those sound like really good books. I'm going to have to pick those up and read them myself.
Yeah, I mean, check them out. And on one of my forums, I forget where it was, it might have been MMA.tv, or I got a forum on policeone.com, which is open. People have asked me about my books. I think I have a list. I haven't updated it in 5 years, but, I got an iPad and had a Kindle before the iPad came out, and I'm always reading stuff. So, it's a long list, but those books that I mentioned, definitely stood out and made an impact.
Good. Could you share with us some of the advice that your mentors have given you?
Oh, wow, I'm so old. I think I have Alzheimer's. I mean, there was, I think all my mentors were the books and the movies. I mean, I did a lot a lot of self-training, a lot of self-analysis, a lot of garage gym training. How I started my company was, a favor to one of my dad's best friends whose son was having a bully issue. I was just 17 and the kid was 15, and he asked me to teach him, some tricks to help him in school. And so I never had I was never taken under anyone's wing. I don't remember my wrestling coaching. I remember being, and let me backtrack. When I grew up in the late 60s, early 70s, doing this stuff, there wasn't the performance psychology and mindset stuff that you're getting, let's say, from Greg Jackson and some of the coaches that have all of this research at their hands, to share with these new athletes. That's a neat thing. You look at an 18, 19, 20-year-old guy who's been doing MMA for 2-3 years, and these guys would probably destroy somebody who was competing in full contact karate who had 10 or 15 years under their belt in training before, because the intensity and the information as far as nutrition, sleep, physical fitness. I mean, these guys are gladiators. I mean, it's just crazy. So, I kind of grew up in between. If you look at any of my old panic attack videos, I mean, we were doing 1-on-1, 2-on-1, 3-on-1, 4-on-2s, but we were blasting each other as hard as guys are nailing each other in MMA fights, just with the equipment on. We were, probably giving each other concussions and doing crazy things in, while we were exploring, hey, let's do this, and it was just an experiment, with a small group of crazy people. But it was pre this big push on understanding mental preparation. So I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. I don't remember anything my coach ever said to me. I did well, but I remember being really, really scared before every tournament. And being surprised when I'd win. And as an athlete, you should never be surprised that you won. That was your goal, right? I grew up on skis, so I grew up in Canada, and you're either a skier or a skater. In Canada, I live in Montreal, and my parents were both in ski patrol, in the national patrol, and I grew up on skis. And by the time I was 13, I was considered one of the top skiers in Canada. People are actually talking about me going to the Olympics with additional training, and I was the only athlete on the ski hill that didn't know that. And I would do amazing in practice. I was looked up to by my team, and everyone thought I was always going to just blaze through the course. But I always wiped out, during important races. And so it'd be these things like, oh, you would have won if you hadn't got your tip in the last gate. You were 2 seconds ahead of the winner, and too bad, And, I'd just smile and go, yeah, I can't believe I slipped on that ice there, or I caught my edge there, or whatever. And I remember this one time, and it was only years later when I started really researching and integrating fear and mindset and how to make decisions under duress, that I remembered. I flashed back to this big race I was having, and I had already, pissed in the forest 3-4 times, thought I was going to puke. I was so nervous. It was this huge race. And my coach is rubbing my knees at the top of the hill, keeping my joints warm. It was kind of cold and blistery, windy. And he says, with a big smile on his face, "How you doing, kid?" And I looked at him. I went, "Great, coach." I just lied to his face. And that stuck out, Levi. Excuse me, because back then, this was 1973, no one sat down and said, "Look, you're a good athlete. The training's good. You seem to be eating and sleeping well, but why do you always fall?" And what it was a mindset issue of what I was thinking about. And so I look at a mentor as somebody who and they don't have to take you under your wing. You could have a mentor you bump into in a taxi cab, and he says something that changes your life, and you want to respect that. So I've had, tens or hundreds or thousands of mentors who've said things to me that make me introspect. But, I honestly, while I've been influenced by so many martial artists, I would say that the closest one, would have been Bruce Lee, through his books, through his teaching, through his spirit, through his energy. He inspired me to do my own thing and walk, create that path. And, but there's been, I've been so blessed and fortunate to have hung out with, some of the best fighters in the world, from Sugar Ray Leonard. I was hanging out with Sugar Ray Leonard when he was 24 and I was 20, and he was fighting Duran in Montreal, and just, but at 24, it's not mentoring. You're talking to the guy going, what are you thinking about in the ring? How do you manage fear? You're doing stuff that Bruce Lee wrote about in the Tao Jeet Kune Do, and you're going to fight Roberto Duran. I mean, what's going? And I would have these talks with this guy, and there wasn't like one like fortune cookie thing where he said, like Customato, the difference between the hero and the coward is what they do with their fear. There was no lightning bolts and
right.
unicorns and stuff. So.
No, that's great. Well, thank you for talking to us today.
Cool, my pleasure.
So this is Levi Wampler with MMAStrikingCoach.com. Again, we were speaking with Tony Blauer. You can check out his website and the high gear and more of his DVDs at TonyBlauer.com. Thanks again.
Thanks, Levi.